G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here, with another report on drones, but this time instead of a local focus and my own, scene where the farmers and the animal liberationists are upset, let's have a look at a Sydney Morning Herald World News report by Ben Doherty, their South Asia correspondent, a weapon failing to keep peace on any side. Drones are proving the best recruiters for the Taliban, writes Ben Doherty in Islamabad. For all its noisy rhetoric, the Taliban has never had a recruiter like the US drones. Quote, I spent 3 months trying to recruit and only got 10 or 15 people, end quote. Former Pakistan Taliban leader Baitullah Masood once said, quote, one US drone attack and I get 150 volunteers, end quote. Masood is dead now, killed, predictably, by a drone strike in South Waziristan. But more have taken his place and the hostility towards the drones festers. Disquiet is also emerging outside Pakistan about the drones' legality, their civilian death toll and their ultimate effectiveness. The emergence of new US tactics has soiled the drones' putative reputation as clean, quote, surgical, unquote, killers of the worst of the worst. Two in particular are resented, quote, signature strikes, unquote, in which unidentified men are targeted simply because of the way they appear to behave, and, quote, double tap assaults, in which targets are hit twice in quick succession, often, it's alleged, as rescuers try to save the injured. Well, that was pioneered by the Royal Air Force in the Second World War night bombing of German cities, where you wait 25 to 40 minutes after the first wave knocks the buildings down and sets them on fire, and then you come in with high explosive and some anti-personnel bombs to kill the firefighters and the health rescue workers. General James Cartwright, formerly US President Barack Obama's vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, is the latest insider to suggest the drones might be creating more terrorists than they kill. Quote, we're seeing that blowback, unquote, General Cartwright said last month, suggesting the aggressive drone campaign could be undermining efforts to quell extremism. Quote, if you're trying to kill your way to a solution, no matter how precise you are, you're going to upset people even if they're not targeted, unquote. The reliance on drones in Pakistan has jumped dramatically in recent years. From 2004 to 2009, 5 years, the US made 52 drone strikes in northwest Pakistan, 10 a year. Since ordering his first on the 23rd of January 2009, 3 days after being sworn into office, Obama has overseen 344. 10 a year to nearly 100 a year. The latest was on March 21. It remains an opaque war. America does not reveal how its controversial, quote, kill list, unquote, is drawn up and offers little information on casualties. Pakistan's tribal areas where the drones operate are off limits to foreigners and even Pakistanis who don't live there. US officials have maintained drone strikes are a, quote, targeted killing, unquote, program responsible only for, quote, single-digit, unquote, civilian deaths. But data collected by independent agencies indicates many more. Part of the discrepancy lies in how those killed are counted. The US presumes any male of fighting age a militant unless posthumously proven otherwise. So first you kill them and then you prove that they are not an insurgent. First you kill them, then you prove that they're not an insurgent. Other agencies say this is a dangerous oversimplification. Because they're men and they're of fighting age, therefore they are assumed to be militants and insurgents and therefore targeted for killing by the land of the free and the home of the brave, where a peacemaker is your gun being bigger than anybody else's gun, especially if there's nobody in the aeroplane with the gun. The London-based Bureau for Investigative Journalism puts the death toll from drone strikes in Pakistan since 2004 at between 2,537 and 3,581. Between 411 and 884 of those have been civilians. Between 168 and 197 children. Pakistan estimates more than 2,200 people have died over nearly a decade, including, quote, at least 400 civilians. Pakistan maintains the US does not have permission to launch the strikes on its soil, and the United Nations says that without that permission, the drone strikes are unlawful. Quote, it involves the use of force on the territory of another state without its consent and is therefore a violation of Pakistan's sovereignty, unquote. The UN's Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and Counter-Terrorism, Ben Emerson, said last month. A recent Pew poll found 74% of Pakistanis believe the US is their country's enemy. Just 17% said drone strikes were necessary to defend Pakistan from extremists. Quote, drones are a specific identifiable enemy of the people. People who live under the drones know they are from America, and it creates a sentiment of hate for America, said Mehran Ali Khan, senior researcher with the Fatah Research Centre in Islamabad. Quote, people don't like the militants, they hate them, but they hate the Americans too, unquote. Khan is from Dabko in South Waziristan. Few families in his region have been untouched by the drones, he says. Last year, his three brothers narrowly escaped an attack when they chose to walk a different path home from their fields. The regular route was bombed as they walked. Quote, people are fearful all the time living under them, unquote, Khan says. Quote, the drones kill and injure people and they destroy homes and villages. But there is the social and the psychological impact too. People are frightened all the time that they will be targeted. Khan said there are three main targets. Hujaras, the main meeting rooms of large family compounds, jirgas, public gatherings of village elders, and moving vehicles. In deeply conservative rural and poor Waziristan, extended families live together in mud brick compounds. The hujara, where visitors are received and men sit to talk, is typically next to buildings reserved for women and children. When hujaras are bombed, targeting visiting militants, the attack typically kills the women and children as well. Attacks on jirgas also risk civilian lives. On March 17, 2011, 2 drone missiles struck an open-air bus shelter in Datta Kel, where elders were holding a jirga to discuss chromite mining. 42 people were killed, only 4 of whom were Taliban. The US maintains all those killed were insurgents. Independent reports, witness accounts and the Pakistani military disagree, and the attack sparked outraged protests across the country. In recent months, it is understood the US has moved away from the first 2 types of attacks. Instead, vehicles are targeted as they move between villages and the drones fire smaller arms to minimise civilian casualties. It remains an imperfect strategy. The view offered by the drone camera can be flawed, too imprecise or even too close. US drone pilot Matt Martin wrote in his autobiography bracket Predator, the remote control air war over Iraq and Afghanistan, a pilot story, close bracket, how a truck carrying insurgents appeared through the Predator's footage to be far enough from houses and pedestrians for a strike. Given clearance to take the shot, Martin fired, only to see 2 young boys riding bicycles suddenly appear on the screen next to the truck as the missiles flew irretrievably towards it. The children were killed along with those in the vehicle. Militants now know they are being watched, Khan says. When they see a drone, they stop moving. They go into a house or to a crowded place like a market. The most comprehensive independent analysis of the US drone program in Pakistan, a joint report by the law schools of Stanford and New York University, raises serious concerns. The Bush White House, the report says, concentrated on, quote, personality strikes, unquote, targeting named, quote, high-value, unquote, terrorists. Under President Obama, the number of, quote, signature strikes has increased. Quote, according to US authorities, these strikes target groups of men who bear certain signatures or defining characteristics associated with terrorist activity, but whose identities are not known. Quote, just what those defining characteristics are has never been made public, the report says. It also raises concerns over double-tap strikes. In Pakistan, it's believed these secondary attacks are aimed at killing those who come to the rescue of those injured. Mansur Khan Mashoud, director of the Fatah Research Centre, says people are acutely aware of this practice. Now in Pakistan, when a drone strikes, the site is left alone for half an hour or an hour after the attack for fear there will be secondary strikes. It stops first aid from reaching those people who might have survived the initial blast. Land of the free and home of the brave, where Peacemaker is having a bigger gun. The drones breed mistrust not only of the US but of other Pakistanis. Sources say the Taliban have grown obsessed with finding spies they believe on the US payroll and the, quote, patrai, unquote, small electronic transmitters they believe those agents leave in the houses of militants to guide drone strikes. Whether the men accused are actually spies, or these transmitters even exist, the US declines to comment, is almost immaterial, Massoud says. We hear about these people. They believe and people don't trust anyone anymore. They think everyone is a spy. Like General Cartwright, Mr. Massoud believes the drones are ultimately counterproductive against Islamic extremism. Quote, the Pakistani Taliban have no future because they have no support, he says. Most of the people hate them. They are getting weaker every week and they don't have the money or the support or the capability they had 2 or 3 years ago. Quote, but for now the Taliban have the excuse that they are fighting Americans and NATO. When and if the Americans leave and the drones stop, the Pakistani Taliban will lose their justification for existing. So the only reason the Taliban is able to raise money or guns or recruits is to fight the Americans, and the only reason the Americans are there is to fight the Taliban. Gee, the arms manufacturers must like that story. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.